So one of the things that I'm worried about is that the people, our millions of listeners and followers, they've never seen me with my glasses on. So I didn't want to scare anybody. I know, roll your eyes already. So I just want them to see me, like the normal me, that they love and adore. And then now we're going to do the world premiere. Not for Vincenzo, he's seen me in worse conditions. But for the people, we're going to do the glasses. So that's me with the glasses. And they will come on and off. They're kind of self-diagnosed.
For the people that are probably listening and not even watching this episode of the podcast, she's wearing glasses and she thinks people are going to be scared of her.
I know. I look like a, I don't know, like a very chic teacher though.
I was going to say, there are a lot of people that have like a teacher thing, right?
Well.
Or like a librarian is what I'm going for.
Hola, bonjour. Bonjour to the people with the librarian thing, because that is what...
welcome to the first episode 0 of the Business of Speed podcast. We wanted to get together, introduce ourselves, a little bit about what we plan on bringing on the podcast, talk about our origin, the origin of... I'll talk a little bit about the origin of Business of Speed, and then we can talk together about the origin of the new Business of Speed.
We have a meet cute, everyone, that I'm excited to share with everyone.
Okay, so I didn't know what meet cute meant.
You had to Google it?
Until, no. I knew what it meant when you said it, but I didn't realize what it meant. Up until like very recently, it was maybe a few months ago, somebody said a meet cute. And I was like, a meet cute? What the hell's a meet cute? And I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, I had no idea.
So we have a meet cute that you're not even aware of our meet cute, but I'm going to explain it to you in a little bit.
I'm going to hear what your version of the meet cute.
It's another world premiere, like the glasses.
Yeah,
Why don't you tell people who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Vincenzo Landino. I am the founder of Business of Speed, motorsport, sports fanatic for all of my life. Yes, Formula One was on my radar long before many were probably even born that are listening to this podcast. Yeah, motorsports and just going fast, speed has always been something that I've been interested in. It's never been scary. People, they get scared of, I don't know, going too fast on the highway or too fast on their bicycle. And for me, it was, can I go faster? How do I increase the speed? How do I maximize what I can get of speed, even though the car that I have probably can't handle that, like doing 165 miles per hour on a 2-lane freeway in the United States here. When I was like 16, it was my first car. Stupid things we do.
Similar story with a Ford Focus. Yellow Ford Focus. His name was Lance, after Lance Armstrong. And I would time myself how fast I could get from like downtown Miami to just outside of Miami where I lived. And I would just like clock, and I would like be so proud if I could shave like a minute, 2 minutes off the time.
Scary stuff.
Very scary. Just like Vincenzo, obsessed with motorsports from a very, very young age. I think that Vincenzo and I have talked about this extensively on our own, and we will talk about this in future podcasts, that we were both really sort of the oddball children that were very much into motorsports growing up. And even though we both have talked about our love for NFL and other sports, there weren't a lot of other kids that were watching open wheel racing as early in age as we were. So we grew up watching these sports. We grew up separately. Of course, I was in Colombia. I haven't mentioned that yet. That's a miracle.
Wow, this is the first mention of, I hope there's an ongoing
Hola, mis amigos colombianos. Okay, so
number one.
In Colombia. Vincenzo was in a little town in Connecticut. We were both waking up at 5 a.m. all throughout our childhoods and teenage years to watch Formula One while our friends were all sleeping in. And this just became, and I speak of this all the time, this lifelong love affair that I've had with motorsports, open wheel specifically, motorsports, but that led me, like you, into other forms of speed. We were talking the other day on our own about how sad we were that the Air Bull racing, those airplanes, what was that called? The air race, I think.
The Red Bull.
Like I got hooked on that, like I will get hooked on anything that is about beating a clock and just being the fastest, which is why I adore Grand Tour cycling. So anything that goes against a stopwatch, I'm very much a fan of.
It's funny because you mentioned getting up at 5 a.m. and whatnot. And now we live in a time where, and we're talking, I digress a little bit, but Formula One specifically, the calendar is now catered to the time zone that we once had to wake up so early for. So it's funny, it's come full circle, and now here we are talking about it, serving clients in that arena. something I don't know that either of us grew up thinking was possible, especially in Formula One, or, in the United States, we had kart at the time, which is, now IndyCar and NASCAR, but Formula
In the
One, yeah, you love it. Formula One, it was, if you knew somebody else that also watched Formula One, that was
friend for
shocking.
life. Like, shocking,
Yeah,
but also the kinship would be instant, right? You couldn't believe that somebody else would watch it. It was beyond fringe. I'm telling you, more people watch skateboarding. It was
probably X Games, all that stuff,
X Games
extreme
was
sports.
way more,
Yeah,
and you and I were actually also fans of X Games because we've talked about
we're
this, how,
talking
like,
about that.
we were talking about that, and our remember we talked recently about our friend Jeremy McGrath. Jeremy McGrath, shout out if anybody even knows who he is. Like, drop us a little comment because not a lot of people probably remember him. Legend. But the reality is that it was fringe of the fringe. Nobody watched
Sure.
Formula One. Nobody watched
Yeah.
Formula One. And then suddenly it's interesting because nobody watched Formula One, for instance, where I was from. And then all of a sudden Juan Pablo Montoya came into F1. And then Vincenzo, something incredible happened in Colombia. Everyone was a fan of Formula One.
Kind of like
But for
everybody's
some
a
reason,
Ferrari
none of
fan.
them could admit that they had just like jumped on JPM's bandwagon. Everyone had to be, oh no, I've been a lifelong fan of Formula. Lifelong. Everyone became a lifelong fan of Formula One, which isn't true because as soon as JPM left Formula One, nobody watched Formula One again. So the
Goes
reality
up
is,
and down.
yeah, it went up and down. Now we have a lot of people, obviously, since 2019 and the Drive to Survive card. Now, luckily, people are watching again. But yeah, we were pioneers, right? Can we say that?
Definitely ahead of most, but we could say that. Let's fast forward to 2019. You brought up 2019. Perfect segue. I identified the opportunity while I was running my own production house to uh, I'm very what is the word I'm looking for? I have like ADD sometimes, not diagnosed. Sometimes I'm like a squirrel, right? Like I see things shiny. Oh look, oh
Like a
look, oh
pro.
look. Uh, so while I was producing and traveling the world for global customer, clients and whatnot, I said, okay, well, what can I do that brings me a little more joy, right? Because you get into a grind and you start doing things that you're just, you're collecting a paycheck, but it doesn't fuel your fire, pasión, la pasión. And I said, well, I want to start talking about Formula One somehow online, and I didn't know what form I wanted to take, but I've always been interested in behind the scenes. And in the United States, there's the saying of how the sausage is made, right? What can you peek behind the curtain? I'm always more fascinated with that than even a lot of the on track. You have a lot of people that are so interested in the engineering of the sport and the aerodynamics and every little detail of the car. I've always been interested, but I don't know. And I've never paid attention to the level of, some people can look at two cars and they'll notice the difference right away in, suspension or the
The
brakes.
front end plate changed. It's not the same one that it was last weekend. And you're like,
Yeah. And that's great. And if you give me some time, I can look at it and say, okay, there's some different, but I've never been that level of detail with the cars. I like the speed. I enjoy the strategy aspect of it, but there are people that focus on that way more than I do. So for me, it was, well, the money that's powering the sport, the money that is the government, the politics that is behind it, the movers and shakers, the who's who that are actually making decisions, who's pulling the strings. That was of interest to me. And so that was where Business of Speed was born. It went through a couple different name changes. I landed on Business of Speed, but it was a few other things before that. And I wanted to focus on the money, the technology, the culture that really is behind specifically Formula One, but all motorsport and all racing.
that's it, right? It just propels it forward and advances the whole.
There's so many conversations had online, in the paddock, in the grandstands, maybe less so in the paddock, but in the grandstands, folks that just genuinely don't understand economics. I actually went to school for economics, so it's always been of interest to me. And There are folks that just refuse to understand how basic principles of economics works. And Drive to Survive, the Netflix, the marketing blitz that Liberty Media has put Formula One through has created demand. Well, there's only so much supply. So something has to go up. What is it? Prices. Yes, it sucks for many, many people who can't afford and who used to go to races for €50, £50 for an entire weekend. It doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't exist anymore. So to me, that was always fascinating. And so that's where Business of Speed was born. It has always been a newsletter and only a newsletter. This is the first time we're dropping a podcast, a proper podcast, both video and audio. My dispatches have gone out anywhere from 3 times a week to once a week, sometimes more, depending on the action that's happening, on and off the track that matters and is pushing the sport forward. And now you and I, we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but fast forward 6 years and it's still the newsletter. We're still communicating to decision makers at brands and rights holders, different racing series, different teams who are all subscribed to the newsletter, which is great. But you and I, and I'll let you tell the story, but I'll just say this really quickly. You and I both had a very similar vision as to how we wanted to position ourselves in the racing world, Formula One world, and our conversations led to what we're doing now with Business of Speed, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but I'll let you kind of jump in and surprise me with our meet
So
cute.
I'll just tell a little bit about me. I was a writer from birth. I really was writing poetry and songs since I was 5 years old. I was that kid, the theater kid, the dramatic kid. I was very much a creative. Straight out of the gates, I played piano, I played guitar, I was in theater. I was always a creative, and that's where my career took me. I started advertising as a writer, and I went up the echelons, and I became a creative director, which is amazing. I adore my job. I adore creative. I love creating big ideas and then thinking of a strategy and how to execute these ideas, and I really have a passion for that. But I've always struggled because I have this in my bones love really for motorsport, right? And I was doing things tangential. I have worked on the Ford account or the Honda Acura account. I did radio spots for a Jaguar Land Rover, but it's not the same, right? I really wanted to be in motorsports, and I was at a point in my life recently where I was wanting to pivot, so to speak, and I was like, if I want to do this now. I don't want to wait. And you hear me say this all the time. I have this mission of being unapologetically happy. I don't owe anything to. I just want to be happy. Happiness is my goal in life. If I'm happy, everyone around me is happy. And thinking of that, in the process of that was going through my head, and I'm on LinkedIn one day. Here comes the meat story. I'm on LinkedIn one day, and for some reason, the algorithm fed me this video of this gentleman in a tuxedo, very very
Gentlemen.
very posh, and doing something that has been done since the days of Napoleon, but is not often done, which is opening a champagne bottle with a saber. And I was so intrigued by the whole thing. First of all, because I'd never seen someone actually do it. So I was already like, wow, that's cool. And also, why is he putting it on LinkedIn? Like, the whole thing just intrigued me very much. And I just commented on that. And somehow Vincenzo and I connected through my commenting on that post. And then I just followed his contact. I started following Business of Speed. And then when I was going through this transitional thing in my life where I want to do something different, I think I want to get into motorsports more actively. I want to go all in this. I said to Vincenzo, can we have a call? To be quite frank, I did calls with a lot of people. Sorry. But he was one of the calls that
Wow.
I did. Yeah, I'm so sorry. You're so hurt. Oh, my Dios mío. Oh,
I
for
don't know
the
if that's
people.
telling of me or telling of you.
No, of course. I'm a very smart woman. Not gonna put all my eggs in one basket. I needed to do I just wanted to be quite frank, there was no agenda. I just wanted to talk to people who were in any way involved with motorsport and get their opinions and just sort of pick their brains, as they say. And when I was on a call with Vincenzo and he was talking and I was asking him questions, etc., this idea in my head kept it was so loud, this drum in my head, I think he and I could do something. I think he and I could take Business Speed in a different direction. And I don't know. No. And I didn't want to say anything at first because I didn't want him to think that that's why I took the call, because it was 100% not why I set up the call. And then eventually I say something and he's like, I already thought about it like 5 minutes ago. He's like, I'm way ahead of you. I've already had this idea and I think you're onto something. I was like, okay, that's good.
Wait, let's see. Do you actually remember the first time we were supposed to talk?
Yes,
Me?
you stood me up in New York.
I
He
did.
stood me up in New York.
I will
I
say
wasn't
this.
going to bring that up because that's such a painful memory.
Genuinely felt bad about it because I wanted to come and last minute things just fell apart. I also got myself confused. I was able to come during the day. You were expecting more of an evening
I was in New
get to
York
get,
for some work meetings, so
yeah, which
I
I
was
didn't realize.
he didn't realize, so I was just expecting him to meet with Vincenzo after 5 o'clock when I was done with meetings. He was thinking we were meeting in the daytime.
Yeah. I remember I confidently was like, oh, yeah, so I'll meet you for lunch, coffee, whatever, around noon, 1 o'clock, whatever.
I was like,
And you
absolutely
were
not.
like, wait, what? Absolutely not. I said, well, then I guess we're not going to
That's
get
going to be a
together.
negative.
That was the first time. That was, I think, before we actually got in a
I
call.
forgave him for that because I'm
You
very
did.
benevolent.
But it was a few months that
A few months
before.
after that, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
well, I'll still talk to him. Okay. Even though he stood me up in New York.
Hmm.
Oh, well, you should tell people I'm in Toronto. That's why I was traveling to New York. And for those who don't know, it's a
She's in Toronto, for
45-minute
those of you that
flight.
don't know.
But it's also a 45-minute flight, so I go often to New York. So it wasn't
She's
like I
also
was.
Colombian, if you didn't know.
I'm from Colombia. Did I mention I'm from Colombia? Hablo español. Did people know this?
She also speaks Spanish and French and
Eu
Portuguese.
falo francês aussi. Falo português. Eu parlo italiano.
A little bit.
Olha, un po'. Anyway, we finally had the call. We were like, let's try to do something. Like, I think that we're onto something. And guess what? We executed on our vision, and here we are now with the podcast, and we're taking client meetings. We have some things in the works that we can't talk about quite yet. Um, let's just say that we are both our hunches separately were
Hmm.
correct that
Yeah.
this could be a nice partnership, and
Here we are.
may we long live. I don't know.
Now that we evolved to the point where now, we have set up Business of Speed as a consultancy, strategic content creation, C-suite education, activations, event hosting, really working in ways that we both can leverage our strengths, and corporate lunch and learns, which a lot of people might not. People have
Let's
asked
see
me.
what a corporate lunch and learn is, because there's two facets to it, which I love. So coming from the advertising world, and
Yeah.
I've big agencies for a long time, it was really fun when sometimes they would say, hey, on Friday, we're having a lunch and learn. What that would mean is that a speaker of any topic, it's just a very fun du jour topic, was going to come in and was going to everyone brings their lunch and you sit at some kind of communal area that the office has, and they would do a very dynamic presentation on the most random of topics that were awesome. They were never about advertising. That was the only thing. They can't, because I was at agencies. They could be
Mm.
about anything. And they were so fun and engaging and invigorating, and they sparked conversation, etc. So Vincenzo and I are doing these corporate lunch and learns for two reasons. One, because sometimes if, let's say, you work at Petronas, for instance, a big Formula One sponsor, I would venture guess that a lot of the people at Petronas, a vast majority, don't really even know Formula One 101. So we can come in and like, hey, Petronas staff, let's teach you a little bit about Formula One. But also for the random non-Formula One connected companies, an ad agency, a bank, an insurer who just wants to bring in a little fun, spicy Friday afternoon for their crew. That's also what we're doing. So it's sort of like two-pronged. And I personally have been involved in many, many fun lunch and learns, and they're always like a hit.
Yeah, from an employee engagement perspective, it's important, especially for if you're a sponsor or if you're a brand looking to, you want to get involved in sponsorship. Our biggest thing, and we'll talk about this episode or the next episode. So after you're done with this episode, go ahead and listen to episode 1. This is episode 0 technically. So listen to episode 1. We'll talk all about our manifesto, what we believe, what we think is changing. But one, I'll give you kind of a sneak peek. One of the biggest things that we truly, truly believe is sponsorships, partnerships need to go beyond. Actually, sponsorships should be partnerships, right? They should be true collaborations, but they need to go beyond the logo slap, which is a word or a phrase we'll use a lot, the logo slap. It's easy enough to throw your logo on a car or throw your logo on, well, it doesn't have to be a car. It can be anything, right? You can sponsor anything. It could be a football kit. It could be, a basketball jersey, whatever it is. You can have your logo on there. If you're not engaging beyond that, you're just in it for vanity metrics, vanity impressions and views, which don't really move bottom line. They don't engage your employees, which is where the lunch and learns and C-suite education come from. But also, they don't give you any advantage over really anyone else that can pay the money to slap their logo on anything. And that's what we're looking to change. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, more about that in episode 1, but we are glad that you're here. We're glad you're listening to us. This podcast is going to be geared for the folks that care about the behind the scenes, what's happening in the racing world. And we say racing, not specifically motorsport, because there's so many different racing series out there. There's electric boats, there's electric cars, there's sail-powered cars or sail-powered boats like Sail GP, America's Cup. There's bicycle racing. There is such a large world out there of racing that I think people tend to, like in the United States, if you said racing, most people might say NASCAR. That might be the first thing they say when you say racing. Maybe globally, maybe they do say Formula One, but there are so many different racing series.
My lover's an IndyCar that I am.
Yeah, I mean, there's all of the extreme racing, like Dakar, Extreme E. Now there's the hydrogen racing series, hydrogen power. So the technology and the different applications that you can see this technology getting slapped onto, it's wild. But here's the cool thing. A lot of that technology ends up trickling down into our everyday lives. It's one big cycle, right? It's just one big cycle. Formula One, the things you see happening in Formula One now are probably going to be in road cars in 5 to 7 years. Just like things that were in, well, a perfect example is the hybrid system, KERS.
Exactly.
That's how you see hybrid systems in cars all the time now, right? And you see kinetic regeneration is in cars. That's one example. Anyway, we like all that. We love all that stuff. So that's what we're going to be talking about on the podcast. We will eventually have interviews. We will eventually have, campaign breakdowns from a creative director herself right over there. We want to talk about all this stuff. So
we may have rants. We may have
rants. We will have plenty of rants. We'll have plenty of rants.
We'll have some, especially maybe after the end of this. Let's see what happens with the championship, etc.
And we'll talk a little bit about that. I have my feelings, but
we're not going to talk about it today because we want to get the people hooked. But there will be rants, of course. And Vincenzo and I often don't agree on things, unfortunately, or very fortunately for our listeners. So
fortunately for you, we don't agree on a lot of things.
Literally anything.
Pretty much nothing. But besides the point. We want you to help us shape the podcast as well. So if you have questions and comments, please leave them wherever you are hearing or seeing this. If it's over on YouTube, drop a comment. If it's on Instagram, drop a comment. If it's on Spotify, you can drop a comment. I think the only place you probably can't leave a comment is on Apple, but if you really want to let us know, leave a review, and in the review, ask a question. We'll make sure that you get answered first. On that note,
if you're going to leave a review,
I'm going to tell you to listen to
5 stars or nothing.
Oh yeah, 5 stars or nothing. Right.
Don't even bother. Don't give us 4 stars, please. Just 5.
On that note, this is Business of Speed with Vincenzo, and
Lali.
We will see you on the next one.
Ciao.
Ciao.